Tchipakkan, and welcome to Otherworldly. And tonight this is the show brought to you by Changing Times, Changing Worlds, where we talk about anything that might be of interest to people who like the paranormal, supernatural, occult, magical, mystical, whatever. And tonight I'm very excited to have Jane Sibley join us talking about runes, because she knows so much more. And I'm going to ask you to help me pressure her to finish the book she's been working on for 40 years. Because anytime she said, what's the best book on runes? She says, well, there really isn't a good one, but I'm writing one. Well, we got to lean on her a little bit. So help me with that, but not during the show. She's amazing. And it occurs to me that if I talk about her, I'm going to have less of her talking. So take it away, Jane, and let me know if you want any visuals. I shall try and help with it.
Okay. Well, I tend to approach runes from a scholarly rather than a New Age format. There's a lot of New Age stuff floating around. One of the best books on runes that you can get that is Runes Reading the Past by R.I. Page. It's not a big book. He was perhaps the foremost runologist going. He's now gone. He died, but he specialized in the Anglo-Saxon runes. But even so, he had, this book is excellent. And so we're going to start with, where did the runes come from? And if you look at the Elder Futhark, here are Elder Futhark runes. And now a lot of the runes came probably from North Italic. And you can see where with some handwriting challenges, that would be F. That would be U, but that it was flipped over from the Roman. Now the TH rune may have been a Greek theta that was abbreviated. A could have come from a that was looking like that. R, this is like a K, but it's missing the vertical staff here. We don't know where G and W came from. H actually came from Roman shields. It was a symbol of the thunderbolt on Roman shields. I will show you some of those soon. N, we don't know. I has always been I, that vertical streg. The Peorth is, we don't know where that form came from, but it seems to have been a P form. B, again, look at the this one here, it just seemed to have cropped up. S, T is like a Roman T, but it's sort of slumped on the sides. B again. E is like a Roman E flipped over on its side. And then the M rune was exaggerated a little bit. L is like a Roman L flipped over, and it's with a sagging thing here. The ing, the D, this one here, actually came from the double axe from the Greeks. And I'll show you some pictures there. And we don't know the origin of Othal. There were no documented Elder Futhark rune names. So the modern Behu, Orisas, etc., were invented by a guy who was writing the Encyclopedia Britannica in the 1920s in a Gestat, rune names in a Gestat Proto-Germanic. So when you see those runes, those rune names, you always have it with an asterisk in front of it. Page does list these, but he does say that with the asterisk, that means it's Gestat. Now, we have a number of inscriptions in the Elder Futhark, mainly people putting their names on things, or also the original use of runes was not magic, but essentially for either identifying an object as belonging to somebody, this is mine, or as let me see if I can find. This is younger Futhark name tags, which would be attached to packages for shipping. So this would be mercantile rather than anything magic. And you can see where you'd have stab tags. This could go into like a bale of cloth or something. And this would be like some of those tags that you tie onto things. Barrels of things would have the runes carved on the top, but it would say Eriker A, Eric owns. These are in the page book. This is a neck ring from Pietro Rhys of Romania. And this one here had runes on Gutano Heilag. In other words, this is probably the guy's name, and that he was probably some kind of a priest. Heilag. Rune names, the runes, this would be for F, U, the TH, soft or hard. There's the voiced rune and there's the unvoiced rune. So this could be th. And we see this even in late Anglo-Saxon times when the Roman alphabet had really taken over. A, R, K, G, W. Then the second set of runes, the second family, this again from the thunderbolt on the shield, I will show that momentarily. And that was not from the Latin. N-I, we're not sure where that one came from. And we're not sure where that came from, but B, this is a question too, and S obviously. T, B, E, M, L, the sound NG, like in sing. But you can't call a rune D and O. Now, flippity flippity flip. Roman, come on, Rome. You're in here somewhere.
Which book is that? Is that yours?
The Divine Thunderbolt, Missile of the Gods.
Yeah.
And I'm flipping through for Rome. I'm trying to get past Roman legions. Okay, here are various Roman shields. I can either hold the book up, but you can see where you would have the thunderbolt in the center, and then either wings or arrows or something off to the side. And so this was the symbol of the thunderer, the supernatural thunderbolt, and many soldiers carried these on their shields, so that their weapons would strike. And this was sort of honoring, as it were, Jupiter Maximus Optimus. Now, one, here, flippity flip. Oh. This here is a Kraguhol spear shaft. And it was pretty much recovered intact. And in the Elder Futhark runes, it says, Erilaj Muha Haita. Gau, ginunga, helia, hagala, viu bi gaira, which means I, the erilaj, which is like a magician, muha, am called. Go, go, go. And then Ginunga was the gap, where you see this in Norse mythology, Ginunga gap, the early equivalent of hell, the just cosmic chaos. The holy Hagal thunderbolt, I name or essentially say as this spear. Now, this spear would have the arrowheads on it, or the spearheads on it, and some of them, I had that here and I just lost the bookmark on it. Flippity, flippity, flip. But you see this, the go, 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 which is a bind rune. You see this here, the G with the A on it, but this is an Anglo-Saxon amulet, which was also go, go, go. So this is thrice repeated. So this is really leaning into it. And note that this one is just 3 lines. So you're really leaning into the magic on it. So that what they did with these spears was you would throw it over the head of the enemy to negate any magic force that they had. Now, let me see if I can find that spearhead. I had that in here. I hate it when the, oh, here's the Anglo-Saxon amulet. And you can see the Roman soldier and then the wolf with Romulus and Remus. And you can see that there's the go, go, go. But this is a good luck pendant in a way. But the Romans were still around at the time. Now, I hate it when my bookmark falls out when I so carefully placed it. Ah, here we go. Here are some of the spearheads, and you'll see sometimes some runes maybe identifying it as striker or something like that. And here we have an action element, in other words, the go, go, go. And on this one here, see if I can get it, we have like the thunderbolt is pulled out. And then they had the sun symbol, that was a sun symbol back then. And here, I'm just trying to show it, and it's not showing up. But anyway, it had da, 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 and then the reverse, identify that spearhead as a supernatural thunderbolt. So when that flew over the heads of an opposing enemy, that theoretically would negate any magic that the others would have, the opposing enemy would have. It would just render them powerless. Now the rune dog, G-A-G, where is it? Oh, here it is. This one here, it looks like a bow tie, but it comes from the Greek double axe. And we also find like lead plaques that are carved out like that. And in Christian times, they had that, and they would put the names of the evangelists on this and stuff it in the a pagan grave or mound to, quote, Christianize things. And we have variants of it. For example, on this shield, around here you can't really see it, but you will have dog, and you will have various forms of that. You will have, again, that's like the double axe of the Greeks. A lot of cultural things came north. And I found this one on a sword in Gotland when I was in Scandinavia in the 60s. And yeah, I did report it. But you see, it's a palindrome also, because it goes this way, and this way. So that made it powerful. Palindromes were very big. Here is an elder futhark on, this one was on the Kilverstone in Sweden. And I'm trying to see, you had the full futhark, and then you had a palindrome here, and then you had a triple tier. When you see in Sigurd Dreifamol, it says, victory you will have, if you know the victory runes, some on the Valbust, which is the a decorative thing on the side of a scabbard, and some on the Valbust, which is the chape or the shielding thing on the end of the scabbard. And then it says, Oknefna tisvar ti, but the poem wants to have the t, but it's tisvar ti, another name, thrice Tyr. Tyr was an honor god and a warrior, and Odin was much later on the scene. These are, this here's a, for example, is scabbard ornaments, and this one here had a form of alu. This was a good luck thing. You start getting magic in here. Alu meant ale, but also may you have the good luck to have ale to drink, which means you have grain to eat. Then you have, and then you have sar alu, be lucky. There are any number of variants there. Another example of magic, because I know that everybody's interested in it. These are the Weser bone fragments, and they were discovered along the Weser River. And this one here was the first one, and it showed a very good description of a Roman ship. And you could identify it so that so this is an if then else. So if a Roman ship looking like this passed by here, say, locum had, look here. Then you get to the next page, and it says, latum hari puni ve hagal. Let us that know woe, hagal. But it's got a funny little symbol in there, latum, and then it goes hari. But that was the rune for ing. So normally it would be, if you just read it straight, let the army, we who know woe, nuke them. But here we say, let Ingve's army, in other words, the supernatural army of Ingve, we who know Ingve, so that the deity would strike that Roman ship. And then we have the thunderbolt, which looks like the drawing of the Halley's Comet on the Bayeux tapestry, but embedded in the tail is also the rune Hagal several times. In other words, so this is a serious strike. The last one says Uluhari did it. Uluhari made this. Now, the guy who discovered these bones apparently carved this in, because if it has a carving on it, it brought more money to him. But it probably did not have that originally. Now, on the inside of a shield boss, you can barely see the runes, but they're scratched on here. And it goes Eskid Hagal, in other words, seeker of the thunderbolt or the supernatural strike, so that would magically make the strike head to the shield boss, and which is the center of the shield, and not to the meaty bits that are hanging out in front or behind or under, whatever. So this was a attraction valve. Now, do we have any questions at this point? Book darts. Ah! What's a book dart? What's a book dart? Okay. Tier, well, tier is, yeah. Note that the three families of the runes, the first family is called Frey's et, or Freya's family. The second one is Hagal's et, hailstone family, but hailstone only occurs in thunderstorms. And the thunder god was frequently represented by sort of say, okay, hail only occurs in thunderstorms. So it would sometimes show or depict the thunder god as by his thunder weapon. And Tyr, whose name is cognate with Zeus, Deus, Dios, was the god, the honor god of the military, of human honor. Odin had nothing to do with runes until Snorri came along in the early medieval times. Now, here is the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. And I tried to put the names there, but you probably can't read them. But again,
I would say don't worry about it.
Theo, Or, Thor, Os, Rat, Hen, Gifu, Win. And you know, they all had sort of meanings. Fe or Feo had to do with cattle, but back then people were on the cattle standard, and our word fee comes from Feo and the Norse fe. Or physical power on the physical plane. Thors, divine power on the physical plane, things that link the worlds. Os, Ash, the plural that was Aesir, were the old gods, and not linked with any particular one. Rat or Rad in Anglo-Saxon could be advice, or in the English you'd call it read, R-E-D-E, or ride. And as a matter of fact, there was an English king called Uthalrad, and he was called Unrad. It was his name meant actually valuable advice, and then Unrad essentially called him clueless. Ken was just the K. Gifu, gift, and win was joy, and our word winsome comes from that. The next, Hagal, you'll notice that the Anglo-Saxon has a double bar here. You see in the you remember from the Roman shields, in the center part, they had like a place where the god would be able to hold the thunderbolt without burning his fingers off. And so this is sort of the hold place. Note, need, east, ice, cold, winter. Not sure what that one was. And this one's sort of sound. A lot of the rune names are not documented. Peorth, and that one was, according to the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, Peorth makes a man's heart glad, essentially when he's with his buddies. It could be if he gets a winsome lass or a winsome boy or wins at dice or has another beer or whatever. Not sure about that. Sul, Sigal, sun, summertime. Back in Nazi times, they mistranslated Sigal as for Zig, victory. And I'm not going to get into the Nazi use of runes into this thing. There's a whole body of stuff that I've got there. And that was linked with Thor. Tyr's aunt, or Tyr's family. Tiu, or two. Beork, birch and growth. Was essentially meant transportation, going from place to place, ride. Today it might be Toyota. Man, human being. Lago, inevitability, but water, and that came from the Roman laku, lake, and that sort of changeability. Ing, again, this is linked with Frey. Frey was also called Ingfrey. Uthal was a area of land, and later on we see this get moved around, and that is a form of dog, the D rune, but with bad handwriting, it sort of slipped, and sometimes that gets confused with the other ones. Ak, oak, ask, ash. So here you have the masculine and the feminine. And then you have various forms of the Y rune. Remember, they started putting a lot of runes in the Anglo-Saxon, so that because they had wanted to name all these diphthongs and everything. And this is the one you see in The Hobbit. And this is eh. This is a g sound or GG sound. Not sure about that. This one is interesting. It sort of looks like Budman's necktie, but that was called stan. And that was from stanum, which meant tin or tin ore. And that's from the ingot shape that they would have, that they would sling over the backs of the animals carrying the tin. Remember, tin was a valuable export from England, and the Romans really wanted it. So, do we have any questions on
Alaska is a great one.
The runes were split in 3 tiers like that? We see this on any number of rune stones. Let me see if I can find one. Let me find a rune stone that shows. So here is the Thames Scramasax. This is where Tolkien bought the runes for The Hobbit. And I don't know whether you can see, but you go Futhark, then it's got a separation mark. And then it goes on through Adalsant, and then the separation mark, and then it goes on. So this goes back into Elder Futhark times. And we will see more about this when we start getting Norse code. Now, I'm trying not to wreck this book. We see also the Elder Futhark runes on the Frank's casket. And this is Fisk Flodu. In other words, fish of the floodwaters. In other words, this was made from whalebone. But the Frank's casket essentially was a story box. And some of the runes were on, were called St. Boniface's letters. So they had, for vowels, they put rune-like symbols as sort of a sneaky code. Oh, they loved having fun.
Oh, Jane, good question about 3 types of runes. Why different versions?
Okay, the Elder Futhark came into being anywhere, started evolving maybe from 50 BCE into about 50 CE, because the earliest documentable runestone or runic find we have is from about 50 CE. And so it had to have been in use, but mostly mercantile. And it continued through the Roman Iron Age into the migration and early Vendel, mid-Vendel times, which was, say, 600s or a little bit later. But then the Anglo-Saxon, you see, the Anglo-Saxons went there and they took the runes with them. But in the north, people started simplifying things into the younger Futhark, which is only 16 runes and not this whole pile of runes. This is the Anglo-Saxon. So no, they just simplified things.
Anglo-Frisian.
Anglo-Saxon Frisian, yes.
It's a collection.
Yeah. But they went from the south. So the younger Futhark came in just before the Viking period. And you see, it was very simple. And I'll show you on some of the runes. The side stave on the R is pulled out And in some cases, it's pulled out so far, it's hard to tell that it's not a U. And there is a rune carver named Upir who was dyslexic. And so he would sometimes write N for A, and then he would try to correct it, and it would wind up as H. So there's a whole book on Upir. The names of the runes of the Elder Futhark are modern guesses, but the Elder Futhark, the first rune was always FHT. And going from Anglo-Saxon and from Scandinavian usage, where it is documented very clearly that this was Frey, the natural earth, Hagal, Thor, the natural cosmos, Tyr, the god who oversaw the acts of humans. So this goes way back. But the Elder Futhark rune names that they come up with now are 20th century. And so, but the Anglo-Saxon rune names are documented, and let me show you a picture there. See if I can find that. Like in some of these old manuscripts. And so it'll show the runes with the names. And in some of these copies, they misidentify the rune. They one place it called it Syriac or Chaldean because the monks there didn't know the difference. And so, but this is on page 14 of Page's book, and it gives the rune names Fe, Ur, Thorn, Os, Rat, Ken, Gifu, and so it gives the rune names very clearly.
And when were the what is the resource for knowing it comes in three families?
Resource it in the Elder Futhark, they're pretty much stored together, but is in the Anglo-Saxon and of course in the Norse you have separation marks, a shilitine, which separate them.
So it could have been monks who are writing everything down.
Well, you can also copy the thing. You know. So well, anyway, here again is the younger Futhark. And the Norse names, which are documented, Fe, F, Ur, Thors, Os, Ræðir, again, ride or wrath, Kaun. Kaun, some places they interpreted it as a canker or sore, but the Anglo-Saxon had Ken or Kaun as a torch, so that would be inner light coming out. Then Hagal, hailstone, and here they have the abbreviated version of the Roman shield. You don't have all the wings coming out, and you have a vertical staff. Naid, need or lack of something. Is, again, we have the I, A, S, which is pretty much the same. T, B, oh yes, Hagal, Naid, Is, Ar, Sul. Tyr, Bjarkan, that's birch. Madr means mastery or human being. Lögur, inevitability, or also water. And this rune was for the sound RZH, but you can't really say so it would be called ear, and it was called also flexibility, like a archery bow. So can you see that?
I think it's pretty cool. We're getting another question. Which do you feel is the most authentic? It depends on the period.
All authentic to period. In early times, it was the Elder Futhark. In Viking times, you used the younger Futhark in Anglo-Saxon times used the Anglo-Saxon, but they used that until the Roman alphabet used by the Christians started coming in. So, you know, and runes, as a matter of fact, have been used into the 20th century in some places. Elvedal in Sweden would have rune use into the 20th century. There was a Danish skipper in the 1800s who wrote his rutter or his secret notes in runes as sort of a code, so that he didn't think anybody much would read it because everybody's reading the Roman letters. But you find in some of the magical spells in the 1700s and 1800s, part of it would be in runes, just to sort of make things mysterious.
Oh, Jane, are you going to have time to talk about some of the actual rune codes? Or
oh yes,
I love that.
How much time do we have left?
Well, you're only about halfway through, so.
Well, here are the short twig runes. Now you see some of them have full stave. F, U, R, K. But you see, you also had dotted. So when you dot the K, it became G. H, remember, you don't have the little cross there. N, you clipped off this part here. I, A, S was a short little thing, frequently with a little, you take your knife and just go. T was like this, because you couldn't, it was different from L, P, B, you didn't have the B, M, you had the little thing, L, and then a little short one for the ear. And this was handy for doing bind runes. Now, bind rune was when you could put things together. For example, in Christian times, you could write Ave Maria. So this would be A-U-E-M for Maria. And you find this like on the bottom of drinking tankards. You find this all over the place in Christian times, but it was still written in runes. Not sure that, see? Now, staveless runes. You take off the vertical thing. So there's F, U, Thus, Os, Rider, Kan. Hagal, you just had the little X. Nad, Is, Ar, Sur, Tir, Bjarkan, Mather, Lugur, Ir. So you would just, and so this was kind of a clever way. And you find some of these on some of the rune stones in Sweden. People being clever. There were some rune stones that had rune-like carvings. You know, it had the snakes or serpents or whatever. Beautiful carvings, but runish gibberish, because it was a prestige item to have runestone in your backyard.
Still is. Jane, do you need to take a drink?
Skull.
Anybody out there want to make a verbal question?
It was not quite, yeah, in a way like shorthand, but the short twig runes were closer to it. The staveless runes were more, here's the short twig. And those were much more amenable to being bind runes. But they didn't really have shorthand per se, though they would abbreviate, like they might, instead of saying Mather, they would just have the M rune. Now I've got some pictures here too, before I get more into some of the code. This here is the Stenkvista stone. This is pagan times. And you can see this has Thor's hammer. And here, you know, the runes, the carving would be done ahead of time, but then you'd buy that stone, and then you'd have the rune carver carve, and sometimes you'd run out of the snake. So Father-Sin, his father, this was named after his father, Father-Sin, they didn't have enough room for everything on it. But this is clearly a pagan stone. And you'll notice that the R, let me see if I can get that in there. Well, anyway, there's an R, I think that's the R. The side stave is way out. It's not tucked in tight.
Could those have been local variation?
No, you find that the side stave on the R way out, and in Greenland, it essentially goes like that. Here's another stone, and this one here is a Christian stone. You can see that, and it has separation marks. The punctuation was separation, like it would be like a little X for Christian, or a dot, or a vertical thing, or two dots between words. You didn't have question marks or exclamation points or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you. But again, they started out just fine, and then towards the end of the inscription, they realized they were running out of space. So then they sort of jammed everything together. So they didn't put things out. They should have taken a piece of charcoal and just drawn the runes, and then, but oh well.
Are these painted?
Yes, in period they were painted with red iron oxide or with soot. There was also a sort of a grayish, greenish paint that they used. It's like the Roman statues in period were very brightly painted. These were very brightly painted. And there's a few rune stones in Runes of Sweden by Sven D.F. Jansson, Jansson. And he's got pictures of some of the rune stones which still had remains of the paint on them. So yes, they were very highly painted.
And they had occasional, well, not typos, but carve-os.
Oh, yes. Like, for example, there are number stones, and then where it goes on, they forget where a letter is. And either it's a little tiny one put in or one put up above. This one is just a nice Christian stone. But you see, the rune carver, the stone, was obviously a very professional one. But they're all in memory of. Now, here, he had run out of space, so they added a little space here, and then I added a little bit here. So it's obvious that the stone, you go to the stone carver and you just pick out the decorated stone that you want. And okay. Here is, in Christian times, you also had runic almanacs, and this is one, and it had the days of the week, Futhark Hagal. So that gave 7 days, and then you had symbols. I wish I could show that clearer. Symbols for the various holy days. Now they had it, and as a matter of fact, there was a chieftain of the Micmac, and I found out about him in the 80s or so, and he had one of these. This is Swedish, but he didn't know what it was, but he thought it was something very magical. But they had these rooms, and they were on wood, and you could you could hang them up or have them. See, I've got a few other pictures. This is the Lindholm amulet. It was a carved piece, and so you would have a magical spell on it, and the magical spell was at the end, well, it had alu, and then triple tir, and then am something else, and then lots of a's for the gods. So lots of gods. But you see, there is alu. There's the triple tir. Then various other magical words. Then a. And we don't know what this is for, but there are similar amulets around, but obviously for incredibly good luck. And I've got to put this back in its little envelope. I only have one picture of that. Another one, this is from Førde in Norway. And again, Elder Futher. Aluko, a little bit of luck. This is a fishing sinker, so that the fisherman would tie this to his line so that he would get fish. Aluko. I think that was kind of neat. Hey, fishermen to this day, you have your lucky hat or your lucky shoes or whatever, golfers. Now, chug. Now, starting to get into some of the codes. This is same stave runes. Then, so you'd have one long line. Thor, Vik, Runas, which is what it says, for hallow the runes. But this was put down here to look like water under the carving of a ship because the person there was buried in a Christian cemetery. So they snuck this in. You can see Thor. Then there's the separation mark. VIK, separation mark, Runage, Thor hallow the runes. That was in Denmark. I thought that was pretty sneaky. Yeah, they were very sneaky. This is an amulet, an axe with Thor. So this is identifying this as Thor. The Thor's hammer came in later and was probably from the Sami shaman, the drum beater. Let's see now. This is a Sami drum beater, which has a short handle. And Horregales, or Dierme, who was the thunder god. Horregales is the Sami mispronunciation of Thor Kale, or Thor fellow. And this is one that I have in my collection, which is made of reindeer horn. But that is where the short handle of Thor's hammer came from. I love sneaky little things like that. Now, Norse code. Where did I put that other card? Probably fell on the ground. Nope. Well, anyway, in Iceland, they had superimposed. So LATTU, which is latu, or may it happen. So mote it be, as it were. And you see this, and some of them are very complicated. I remember seeing these in the museum in Reykjavik and trying to copy them down. And it was theoretically that the person who carved them, and only the god or the supernatural would be able to interpret it. And you had to essentially do anagrams to figure out what the word was. And some of the words, this is a very short word, but some of them would be a name of a saint or something like that, like Botolf was a favorite. I don't know who Botolf was a saint of, but anyway. Now, let me find Yoga Futhark. one of the codes, you started having, you'd identify this as, okay, this is the first family, second family, third family, but then they got clever. So they said, this is first family, second family, third family. And now you get to a binary code. So I am missing one of my cards that I had here. Where the heck did I put it?
I'm not saying it was fairies, but I blame them on everything. Oh, Saint Batoff was the patron of travelers.
Well, somewhere I've got it. But on the Rurkstone, you will have what I call the windmill code. Now, on one side, you will have, on the top was what family, and then the name of the number of the rune in that family. So this would be second family, would be Hagaset, third family. And so that third rune, so that would be I. So you see, that would be I. So you would read that one, and then you'd read this one, and then you'd read this one, and then you'd read this one. And so this was a sneaky little code, but, and this was
that pretty much confirms that they knew which one was in which order in which line. That kind of confirms
yeah.
that there were lines.
Yeah.
Was that mostly used in the younger Futhark?
Yes. I just have to do this quickly. But variants of this would be 2 and 3, or 2 and 3, and we see this on in Mazehow, New Orkneys, and some guy was essentially writing how clever I am. I do these runes, and you could have something like this would be 3, 2. I sort of doing this very quickly, but on one side, on the left side would be the family, and then on the right side, no, yeah, on the right side would be the rune in the thing. So you could do a variety of symbols so that you did not repeat exactly the same symbol. And so you didn't know whether it was the commonly used letter or whatever. And here's another version of that. This is the swimming fish code. There's 2 and 3. Bearded man, 2 and 3. The fringed jacket, 2 and 3. Oh, they had fun. Now, I wish I had more of these cards, and I've flipped out some of them. Again, here, now this is Elder Futhark, but you can see even back, this is the guy identifying his workbench, but you can see even there, the R, the side stave is pulled off. Haradu, Tawida did this. So that's his name, and this Tawido made this. So there was a lot of, I made this. Now, on some of the funerary urns, I don't have a picture of that, particularly in England, on the urn, you would put the runes for tier, or two. because that would give the deceased the courage to go from the land of the living to cross the dangerous path to the afterworld. And so here would give you courage. Odin was not known for courage. He was more of a tempest god. We're going to be doing an Otherworldly later on the Oscaraya, or the Asgazrai, or the Wild Hunt, where Odin does show up. But he was codified relatively late. There's a wonderful book, Lady with a Mead Cup, and it goes into that he started out as a comitatus, or elite warrior god, and slowly migrated up towards Denmark. Of course, we went across to Anglo-Saxon. People wanted to claim noble heritage from a badass. But becoming the chief of the gods essentially was Snorri. Snorri Sturluson lived in the early 13th century, something very early medieval times, and he was theoretically a Christian functionary. And and he did invent a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of names and things like that come in what he wrote, but which is not reflective of folklore or previous history or archaeology. Now, see if we got any more questions. Yeah. Stuck inside during an Icelandic winter, you either get clever or go crazy. I've been stuck inside in a Norwegian winter. The partying, oh my gosh. And the julebord, the Yule table. But if you ever go to Iceland, avoid haukarl. That's fermented shark. And if you think if you licked the deck of an old fishing boat, which had been out in the August sun and had not been cleaned for 20 years, haukarl is fishier. I remember going to an Icelandic party because I was helping out with the Special Olympics in New Haven in 1995. So I was assigned to the Icelandic team. And they had this party, and they had all these things out, and I was nibbling my way, yummy. And then there was this platter, little cubes that looked like cheddar cheese with crackers. So I figured this was cheddar cheese. So I popped one on a cracker and tossed one into my mouth. Oh boy, haukarl. But I chewed, because every Icelander in the room was looking at me. So I chewed and swallowed, and then I went back for another. And then I was in. But then I went over to the side where they were serving Black Death, which is Icelandic akavit, and sort of sterilized my mouth after that. Tolkien used the runes, primarily the 10 scramasax, which I showed you earlier, but it's the Anglo-Saxon ones. But he did put serifs on it. And so when I found The Hobbit, here's your dime. So I got The Hobbit, and I loved it. And the runes were good, though he just misspelled one word. When the thrush knocks, he spelled it H-W-E-N, but oh well. But then I got the Lord of the Rings when I was in college. And boy, were all the runes all different. And so I, smart-ass college student, wrote Tolkien a letter asking about the runes and saying, well, this one is a Greenland variant, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be like you took the Anglo-Saxon or the Roman letters, scrambled them up, tossed in some Cyrillic and some Hebraic and maybe a Chinese character or two, and passed it off. And so I said, in the lifetime of one individual, Bilbo Baggins, why? Well, it took a year, but I eventually got a letter back. And you could tell his typewriter ribbon was dying. But he said, you're absolutely right. we're explaining this as one system is going out and one system is coming in. And then he recommended in that glorious handwriting 2 books on runes that I already had. But, you know, this is one of my treasures, is a real, honest to God letter from Tolkien. Now,
I'm just putting up the link to finding
oh,
Norse mythology according to Uncle Einar. And okay, this is it. We've come to the end of the hour, and time for any questions you have. Starwolf, did you have any?
and if I
Not
don't
really,
know, I'll
but
say I don't know.
As to the fermented shark, the buffet at the Icelandic Airline Hotel in Reykjavik used to serve that stuff. I remember it going to and from Israel. I think she just froze up.
No, I'm still here.
Yeah, downwind of that stuff was always interesting.
Yeah, but the henkichek, which is the hanged meat, is delicious. And hagfish, hard fish, you'd butter it and you'd eat that. And that was dried fish. That was good. Yeah, I like the Icelandic food, but the hakarl is something else.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I wasn't old enough to be allowed akivat.
You poor thing.
Yeah,
But
strong coffee
when you
works
went
well.
to Israel, you were in the, 6 Days War?
No, I wasn't. I would have been a little young. I was kind of young for that one, Holy Day.
Ah. Let's see if there's any other.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, they don't have any vowels because the vowels are the breath that animate the words.
Yes.
So why do you think the runes do have vowels? Was it that, it was try to activate it in magic?
Well, vowels were just part of a word. It was not the prohibition as in the Hebraic tradition. And I notice that you will spell God as JHWH or G-D. But, and I was very careful in the Divine Thunderbolt to refer to the Abrahamic deity, primary deity, as JHWH, because, that's a respect thing.
Yeah, that's great.
What a lovely tiara you have. King the flowers.
Thank you. Well, I'm coming at it from a Slavic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a wonderful book. Slavic was called The Bathhouse at Midnight.
Have it?
Of course.
You have it? Isn't that a good book?
I want to get Robin on Otherworldly. Oh, have we got you coming to Changing Times?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Divine Thunderbolt, as a matter of fact, you can buy from Amazon. And Tchipakkan is my cover artist. There's Zeus, busy nuking an innocent tree.
Yep, I have that one already too.
Yeah, and there's Thor with ball lightning and a dog with a lightning whip. And so, she's my cover artist. And she's done several books for me. And Uncle Einar, the illustrator unfortunately died just after he'd done the cover art and the first interior arts. But I have somebody that's going to be doing the some of the interior art in his style, but the book is going to be dedicated to Joel's memory.
That's nice.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and especially thank Jane, who you will be able to see at Changing Times, Changing Worlds. And if not, I shall tag her for otherworldlies. Changing Times, Changing Worlds is going to be November 3rd through the 5th. And there is actually going to be a virtual track for those of you who are, because we don't know what COVID's going to do. My goodness. The
links for buying my books is on Amazon, and I write as J.T. Sibley. I figure if it was good enough for J.K. Rowling, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, may it's also serve as a good luck charm for making piles of money.